Okay, and away we go. All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Grimdark Therapy. As usual, I'm joined by Maka of the Outer Circle and North from Northern Exile's YouTube channel.
So,
Yep.
This week's topic was actually suggested by Northern Exile, and the gist of it is Grimdark Therapy now owns Games Workshop. What do the next 10
right,
years
we do.
look like?
First
So-
thing we've got to decide is who was like the main lead on that deal. I think it was Outer Circle. I think he was the one going in there with the big cash stacks.
Yeah, a super amenable deal that they were very privy to, 100%.
Yeah, I just can't believe that I got all of that money so easily. You know, the secret really was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I guess all of us have. Oh, whoops! It was my armrest. I swear. All of us have things we would like Games Workshop to do. Obviously, things we would like to have implemented. But I suppose it's worth considering what the constraints would be. Like, what would the limitations? Because we can't just knock down all the walls. Or do you suppose we could? So that's kind of like the opening kind of question I wanted to run by you guys, right? Just to kind of set up a little bit of a fence. Or maybe set up if there
yesterday
are...
I talked about looking at numbers and things like that, but I think that's a bit too in the weeds, and we bore people doing that. Maybe like we just keep the suggestions doable, because I think we've all got like a pretty good idea of what doable is for a company of Games Workshop size. They're turning over around 50 to 60 million pounds a year in profit. That's clear profit, not net. That's clear. That's going into the bank. So I think we've got a good example of what we can work with. There's money you can throw around. The thing is, biggest thing, if we buy Games Workshop, it is now privately owned. It's not on the stock. We don't have shareholders. We are us. Like, we bought it, so it's us. So you don't have biggest changes. You don't have shareholders to please. You don't have people that you need to constantly grow and grow and grow. Because if you paid £60 million this year and £59 million next year, you're losing money. That's not. That ain't nice. That's ridiculous. Now we don't need to do that. So that's one big thing. So do we want to keep shareholders, or do we want to get rid of them? One thing.
That's certainly definitely removes a lot of the constraints, right?
Because
I mean, because I was going to suggest...
it's your money.
I was going to suggest concepts such as, like, are we able to offer consumers transparency with regards to roadmaps and things like that, right? Can we provide a more insight? But I would imagine a fair few of the changes we would want implemented would just have pushback on the grounds of shareholders alone, right? Never mind, success or whether or not, like, how profitable those ideas may or may not be.
I think with shareholders, you would need, if you want to do something like lower the prices. I think we all want to do that. Maybe we cover that first. It's the big elephant in the room, isn't it? Like, I think if you want to lower prices, the shareholders are the ones you're going to have to go in and say, hey, this is where I see us in 5 years if we don't do this, and this is where I see us in 5 years if we do this, right? And here's why it's going to work. Again, I'm not sure. I reckon we leave this one up to Maka, because in our little heads, he's the one who's like spearheaded the deal. Maka, do you want shareholders at the company, or do you just want to boot them out? Be like, no, we bought the shares. Off you go, lads.
It's easier to work from the standpoint of we've managed to come into the top job, but we don't have the billions in equity probably, so we probably still have shareholders. Still a publicly traded company, just we're probably the majority shareholders, and that's how we've ascended into this lofty position.
That's probably more realistic, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, in that case, I'm not sure how long the prices are going to go, boys. I think we're going to get a revolt on our hands from the boardroom. What do we can?
Well, we can lower it insofar as the pushback will enable I mean, if it's a must, I don't know if, like, all of it. I think you're right, North, in that all of us do feel that we would prefer for the prices to not be what they were, for them to be something a bit more competitive, something that feels a bit more healthy to the consumer and the player base, right? For something sustainable. But I don't know how necessary it is because I don't know for myself. I think the cost is acceptable as it is now, while not ideal. And I think there's more systematic, game management changes that I guess I would like to push over prices. Like if I had a priority list, I think I would prefer the functional changes over the cost coming down. Because while it is expensive, it isn't what's holding Games Workshop back the most, in my opinion, right?
Yeah, I think if anything, it would be a good initial sign. You know what I mean? Like it's saying to the fans, hey, this is the direction we're going in. I mean, this is where we're going.
So
rather than, and something that needs to be done. It's more of a, hey, just for goodwill, that Grey Knight thing that is out there, that's £37.50, even though it's like a 20-year-old model. Yeah, that's now, £25 because it's a really old model and we can print it really easily. Do you know what I mean? That kind of a thing.
Right. It's just the cost of the upgrade sprue.
Yeah, the
kind of
more
choices.
egregious of the price, levels, those are the things that need to come down. That new Primaris stuff, it's new, and people will pay for it. It's more the really old models and really overpriced models that need sorting, and that's something we can do by committee. But as an example, the Grey Knight Strike Squad would come down to £25-ish.
Yeah, I think that's a good line. Right?
Yeah. The easiest way to probably tackle this, and I may or may not have had 10 years to consider what I would do in this theoretical position, is to put a price pause on them and say, once a kit has hit a certain age, that's it. It's not going to go up any more in price. You're just saying, like, look, we will absorb the cost because essentially the marketing, the designing, the cost of producing that mold, it's all paid off now. So it's really just the labor costs and the production costs of actually getting this thing out there. So therefore, we can look at things like the old world as a great example and just go, yep, a lot of these kits are 25 plus years old. Like, they've paid themselves off now. So as a show of like good faith towards the community, you can set it in stone. Just be like, once a kit hits 25 years old, bam, it immediately flatlines the price. Because the beauty of that is it's such a long figure. There are very few kits that really fall into it out of all the SKUs that the company currently has. So the community will be like, wow, this is amazing. Like, they're not going to raise prices on any of these old models anymore. What they don't realize, of course, is it's such a small slice of the pie. Like, we just gained a whole lot of good consumer will and didn't really do much. Thoughts?
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. Great idea. A price freeze for those kits that have already, like, in some cases decades ago, have earned their profit back, right? And are now just now we're just kind of just rising with the tide. Like, the Land Raider is like a great example of this.
Lower them than freezing. That's what I need. That's what I need.
And you mentioned a key word there, Maka. And that word that stood out to me is the word community, which reminds me of an initiative I would probably put forth on, day one. Like, I think we need to overhaul Warhammer Community. I think it should really be something more evocative of what we call it, right? Like a platform which really showcases the community at large. It might have a bit more of a cost because of that, right? You might have a dedicated team towards it. There might already be a dedicated team towards it, in fairness. We just don't know, like, what their capacity or duties currently entail. But I would suggest some restructuring towards creating a platform which makes the community actually feel like they're heard, right? Like, I think some form of comments would be amazing. I also think just having the ability to not, or just have a paradigm in which we don't have to just always talk about what's on sale this week only, and then immediately forget about it, right? I mean, we have all these affiliate partners, right? We have these big YouTube channels. I mean, why, like, if, for instance, if Tabletop Tactics or Mini Wargaming or any of these big channels makes a battle report, why don't we have a little featured, like a little sidebar on our community page that shows things that we approve of, obviously, the creators that we have a pedigree with, and showcases, them playing our systems so that people could see how exciting Legions Imperialis is. Things like that. I know. What are your thoughts? I'm sure you have ideas as well for Warhammer Community overhaul.
Yeah, in terms of a big overhaul, one thing I'd like to do, I think that those are good ideas, by the way. I think that's a great idea. Like, be more open with people who are on YouTube, things like that, open ourselves up a little bit. On the flip side, you got to make sure you protect these people and they don't look like they're shills anymore. Do you know what I mean? That kind of a thing. Because there are certain channels that will kind of be ruined by direct access to Games Workshop, and Mini Wargaming is one of them. They're really good independent. Maybe on the down low, make sure they have new releases and things in time. Make sure they get, aligned to the team, so they can talk to the studio and things. They don't know what's coming out. Maybe not necessarily know what's going out, but so they've got a gist of what's going on. That kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of Warhammer Plus itself, raise the prices to $10 a month. Right? Bear with me. You double the price, okay? From 5 to 10. We take all of the battle reports we do, we throw them on there, and we do them every day at Warhammer World live, right? Do really good battle reports, really good terrain, all that good stuff, right? All that. Every single electronic codex goes on there, right? It's automatically updated. So with your $10 a month, you get access to every single codex. And there'll be a cheat sheet on how to play each army, like one-page rules, front and back, right? A different list you can take. Here's what you do with it, front and back, right? So you can get the rules, go straight up there, start playing. I would start doing that. I think if you then couple that with investing some money into small indie animation studios, you go on YouTube, you look at these people, and you let them make things like The Secret Level on Amazon. Do you know what I mean? You do things like that, and you throw them onto, even if it's an anime. You could do an anime, you could do an animated short, you could do a whole TV series that is animated. Throw those on. Go to Brother Alpha Booster. Say, hey, that was a really funny thing you did. Do you want to do it from the top, but with some money? And we'll put it on. We'll do the Emperor's Text.
I would be very hesitant to be involved in any of that if I was running the company. I see it all as a money pit. Which is interesting because we've both got different viewpoints on how we tackle this. See, the very first step I'd be taking there is something that happens pre-Warhammer Community even, which is create an actual team that's in charge of the canon and basically going through every system and establishing a new hard canon. Like, this is it. This is now what isn't the official history, because it's a bit of a mess right now. And let's just can the debate. Like, set in stone, this is the left and right of arc. Because until you've done that, the actual, like, any productions, anything you want to make is always going to have that window of, well, what if this? What if this? I interpret it this way. It's like, no, let's go back. Let's, turn Primaris don't exist. There's Primaris armor. It's a reference for Mark 10 power armor.
Yeah.
Start with things like this and clean it all up that way before moving to the Warhammer Community stuff. And then I think, instead of going out and funding productions, have people come to you and license productions from you so that you're making money off these productions without having to lift a finger. Outsource that stuff.
I think you can combine the two ideas. I think you can have, we're going to put your stuff on our subscription service, do you know what I mean? But we will give you a percentage of what it makes and things like that, and how many people,
You'd probably have a tiered program, right? I think we'd all be in agreement of, look, fan animations should be encouraged. They should not be cease and desisted, right? And then at the same time, you might have those exceptional ones that you want to have under the Warhammer Plus paywall, right?
Should you have a Warhammer Plus?
Well,
I do like it. It is good.
Do
it is.
Mm-hmm.
But you set the foundation of the house in first before you start building the house. And Matt goes right there. You really do. You let people know what canon is, you know. By the way, you probably have to like re-interview for all of these studio writer positions because I'm not happy with that.
Oh,
You know,
I've said it before. I'm going through and basically, you think Doge fired a lot of people in the United States? you ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement on that front.
I've got no place for incompetence. Another strong thing I would do, and this is sort of tangential to the topic at hand, is I'd be looking at hiring a lot of people into senior positions who actually know what they're doing, that aren't just, you know, the old boys that have been with Games Workshop for years, right? Yeah, there's a place for that, but let's actually get people who understand hobby and business, right? So not just people who understand business, because that doesn't work. Not just people who understand hobby, because that doesn't work, but people who understand the both. Fill out some of these senior executive management roles, because ideally I don't want to be the CEO. I want to go into the areas that work best for me, which is in manufacturing and production management, because that's what I've been. That's what I know really well. I know how to hire tradespeople for that. I know how to design molds. That's the area I should be in. So I'd be looking to hire people who know how to run these sort of companies, who can be senior executives, and really elevate them into the position so I don't become a Tom Kirby. Or as a triplicate.
You don't want to run everything. Yeah, you want to spread your influence, not run everything. You get people in.
Which goes to say that one of you guys could be the one who I put in the law department, you know? Because since I fronted the money for the company, right, I'm making these calls. So,
I think it works best that we have one person who does that. We make our case to you, and then you say, okay, yay or nay.
Yeah, like some kind of CEO that actually does some running of company. So with that in mind, I think if you establish that canon, I'm very lukewarm on Warhammer Plus already, because to me Warhammer Plus should really just be a subscription service that gives you old White Dwarf articles and tutorials and all of your codexes and additional army updates, like all of the actual rules related stuff, is what I'd love to put in Warhammer Plus, and encourage people to play different editions. Like, hey, all the 3rd edition books are in here. All the Rogue Trader books are in here. You pay a subscription.
Oh yeah, love that.
You get it, right? But we also have the new hotness over here, because we know that we're going to make an even better edition than what the 40k is right now. So all of that would be happening. I'd also be looking at what I've said before, which is the way that I would be treating the Games Workshop stores. I would be closing most of them and instead locating major stores in major retail shopping malls and just taking the hit on the chin that it's going to cost money, because I want them to be like an Apple store. I want them to be lucrative. I want them to be a place where it's like, oh, that's the Games Workshop store. That's the Warhammer store. And it's not a dingy dungeon down fucking Stab Alley where you get acid attacked when you're trying to get there. No, it's a store that, you know, it has the Warhammer, you know, it has either the movies playing on the big screen television there. There's a couple couches to sit around. There's or you have like demos for the video games, and the video games like Space Marine 2, it's literally on the shelf next to the screen where you can stand there and play the video game. And then next to that is a box set of miniatures from that game. So it's like, you like this? Then you can buy the game and you can buy the miniatures, right? Cross-platform that shit.
Do you think, so in terms of like, we'll look at Warhammer Plus and then leave it now. So my suggestion was double the price, get that up there so the people who really want it get it. I think all of Macca's suggestions are really good. Like, for you basically adding on to what I said. And in terms of animations, we outsource those, and the very best ones we want to hire you, you can do that in-house, the very best ones. But apart from that, you outsource, you let people get the name out there, you let people get, you know, things going on, that's fine. We cool with that? We'll be doing that with Warhammer Plus and then shoving the side over there and it's done?
Yeah, I think it's reasonable. Like, it'd be nice to have those assets, that capacity to make something like we see GW basically do this for the new edition of a game system trailer. They come up with a little special animation, right, to get up the hype or whatever else, right? So you definitely want to have some capacity to produce that ourselves.
I would
For
actually
those.
say, do you know what?
Mhm.
Sorry, mate. I'd
It's all
say
good.
throw in White Dwarf in there. It doesn't sell. Throw in White Dwarf. You get White Dwarf too. You get a card, a Warhammer Plus membership card. Go into your local games workshop, show that, you get your White Dwarf. You know, I mean, that's another thing you can throw on there.
Yeah, I think that's
You
good
look at the
value.
sales numbers. You know, it's so expensive. Nobody buys this fucking thing. You know what I mean? Like, the only idiots who work in the hobby like me buy the magazine. Do you know what I mean? So just throw it in. You know, get these people paid. It's fine.
Yeah, I'll continue on with that. So in my stores, I would try and stock the most important stuff in that store, right? I would have my merchandise section in there. I would have basically half the store devoted to just games, right? I have really high-end displays and miniatures in the front window. None of this grey plastic or any of that kind of thing. Like, make it so that the store itself is lucrative, but also police the clientele. So don't just let someone be the smelly nerd coming in, stinking up the joint. Like, kick him out. Kick the motherfucker out, right?
Yeah, you have to
you're
have some
a functional human
standards.
being, you're in, right? It's pretty simple criteria, right? Because you want to shake the image of the nerdy hobby, right? Have your pictures of like your Henry Cavills and stuff on the walls. Have like the TV has like a commercial break every 20 minutes and he comes on television. Hi, I'm Henry Cavill. Welcome to Warhammer. You know,
Right.
and it gives you a little,
Yeah.
gives you a little.
This is
feel,
a
right?
hobby for sophisticated gentlemen, of course.
Yeah,
I'm being
trying to move it away from
tongue in cheek there, but I
a
agree.
silly kid, you know, so because those stores, like the one thing that GW has over all its competition is it has physical stores. It has a physical recruiting ground where members of the company can directly engage with the consumer base to get them into the game and tip them over the point where they go from not spending to spending. And they do such a terrible job. Like, they've got all of the resources to do it well currently. They just don't. Because, like, why don't you have copies of Space Marine 2 video game on the shelf in the store, right? Like, if you've got someone who comes in, plays a tabletop, and they don't know the video game exists, like Total Warhammer, they might turn around and go, oh, I can play that? They could buy it in the store. You get, you know, more cross-pollination between systems.
Yeah, it would be a great idea.
Why don't you have box sets that tie in to these video games? So it's like, you played them in the video game, play them in real life now, right? So these are things that need to happen in the stores. As for the stores themselves, I want to return to the 3-man store. I want to have a guy who's managing it, sitting there at the register in the middle of the store, keeping an eye on everything. I want to have a guy who's running games and running intros, another guy who's teaching painting and going around and talking to different people around the store, getting them into, you know, you want to buy this, you know, what are you here for today, all that kind of thing. Like, I want it to feel like a high-end thing. So if I sacrifice 2/3 of our stores and use the resources on the remaining third, so take the staff, take the wages, take the rental costs, put into those, I think it's a more worthwhile investment than having a bunch of stores dotted around the country where you can't even play a game.
Well,
Where you can't even paint a model.
So we are taking an initial hit with closing the retail stores, but the amount of money you're saving in staff wages and rent is astronomical. You know, so with that, you can then rent larger spaces for these Warhammer stores. You know, 2 or 3 floors, maybe. You know what I mean? Like, these really Nexus points of the hobby, make them that. Make this a Nexus, an actual place where it's like, hey, if you do Warhammer in this area, this is the place you go. You may want to go to all these other stores for this and that, you know, but this is the place where you go do your gaming, where you go immerse yourself in Warhammer. Like that. You want to go, if you don't want to be bothered by Magic the Gathering smelly sweatheads, this is where you come. Like, you if you're the discerning Warhammer fan, or a mum who has kids, this is where you come. Because the bottom floor of every store is like introduction, you know, introduction spaces, all of the starter kits, the Space Marine game, the Warhammer 3 Total War game, everything's there. It's all flashy. Henry's down there on the screens, as you know, OC just said. Everything's down there for beginners. You walk in, and even if you're not a beginner, you walk in and go, wow, you know, look at this. You know, it's like Disneyland, but for you know, non-kiddie chasers. It's awesome. So you walk in, and then the second floor is, you know, really cool boards, really cool games, things like that, with product all around you. that kind of a thing. And third floor, you can do like private functions and things. But those 2 floors would be essential to any plan that I'd want to make. If you want to make it the Nexus, you make those stores bigger. And you go, right, okay, we take some of the money we saved there, we pump it into these stores, and make them a central hub. You don't tolerate that anymore from like smaller retailers. You know, if you want to sell off your things I'd like them to keep the discount. Do you know what I mean? Like some of the other retailers, because I want them to stock our products. But if they're getting a discount, if the customer can go and buy product from other places, I'd like them to have something else at the store where they go, well, I come here anyway because I get so much more for my money. Not that it matters if we sell anything at the store. I would take that away from the managers as well. I don't give a shit how much product you push and sell. All I care about is your recruitment numbers. All I care about, right? And the community you're fostering, your attention as well.
Yeah, the community should matter.
The more good reviews you get from your local community, the more I'm going to give you a thumbs up and say, okay, good.
I love that idea of a Games Workshop store serving as a community nexus, like in the local physical space of wherever we place these, like whatever towns these stores are located in.
I don't want to share my space with Magic the Gathering. Why should I? You know, we're the big boys.
And it should
Warhammer, this is where you go.
It should be something that you can look. It should be a big deal, right? Like, oh, I'm going to go play at a Games Workshop. Like that should be an exciting prospect for someone in the hobby, right? Based on the picture you're painting, it would be, right? But presently, it's pretty much inverted, right? Going to a Games Workshop basically sucks with regards to playing and, you know, developing a camaraderie with local players, right? Because there's no space, virtually no space compared to local gaming stores.
That's it. I think we've kind of. I mean, Maka. This is working really well. Like Maka comes in with like the sledgehammer. Goes, right, this is what we're doing, and then he builds a foundation. He goes, right, north, you build from there, and we built. Like I think this would work. I think that this would get a lot of people back into the hobby, or it would actually start to change a few minds as well about going to a Games Workshop store, going to a Warhammer store. And by the way, just rebrand them. Do Games Workshop. Don't. You know, we don't need just. We're not Apple. You know, I act like an Apple, but we don't need like sleek. Here's Warhammer.
We don't need to call it Warhammer. Go back to Games Workshop.
All Games Workshop. That's what it is.
Given the hypothetical of the takeover, a return to the more wholesome branding might be on point, right? Might be a return to form.
I think with overall control, that's something he would have to give us direction on.
Do you like that or do you not?
So I don't think we need to rebrand. I think the Warhammer name is a very, very strong brand. But again, I want to pull in people who are brand experts to do this thinking for me, right? Because they're going to have a better idea of how to engage with customers and, you know, be the height of hubris to think I can solve all these problems. Even all three of us combined, right? Yeah. But I think Warhammer is a very, very strong name. But the logos and things like that I think there's room, like, scope to change it, because you can possibly head down like the retro route, like let's bring back the red and yellow, like heavy metal style logo, or let's double down on the current style of like black and white logo if you want to be even more like an Apple shop and make it look super corporatized and a bit stale but modern, right?
I've got an idea.
Yeah,
go for it.
What you were saying before about retro stuff on the app, why don't we brand that in yellow and gold, in yellow and red? You know what I mean? But so when you go to the portal of the store, it's like, hey, this is what it used to be like. Like it's literally like your old Games Workshop. You know what I mean? Like you got the yellow and red banners, you got all that sort of stuff. You got the goblin green bases. You got all that. You know that part of the store is all branded like that. But the actual store itself is Warhammer. I mean, it's like black and white. There you go, massive store, really good branding. And even on the app, when you go into that section, there's like a little fanfare that plays, and it's like you're going back in time, like the red and yellow, and it's Games Workshop symbol as well, rather than Warhammer symbol. You know what I mean? Like you lean into that continuity, you lean into your heritage, and say, listen, that's what it used to be like. And you want to go back there? It's there. Right? Get your wallet out, son. It's there. You know, what are you looking at that?
Yeah, I'd be down with that.
Yeah, I don't think that's bad at all. I kind of make fun or I guess poke fun at GW for cashing on nostalgia bucks too much, but that's just an aesthetics choice, right? It's not like we're trying to push product based on nostalgia alone, right? So I don't feel bad about that.
I would probably look at like the staff and such first, and be like, well, what are my staff bringing to the table here? As in, like, their clothing, their attitude, their styling, like, again, if you're going to professionalize it, let's make these people look like they're actually professionals. That's something that needs to be spoken about with brand, because like, as much as I love like the old school, like heavy metal, like hair down to the shoulders days of Games Workshop, like, no, you got to be engaging with like all kinds of people. And unfortunate truth of the world is people like clean cut individuals and they got to deal with them, like salespeople.
Right.
This is what it is.
I think that's reasonable.
Because again, you're trying to capture the majority of the market. Like, I'm fine with tattoos and things like that, as long as it's covered up and stuff. I don't want to be seeing like teardrop tattoos under their eye or something. But you're trying to show the professionalism. So logos, uniforms, the way people conduct themselves is all a part of that, right? And we really need to be looking at the personality of these people, because there are just that many nightmare stories. I mean, hell, North, you share so many of them about terrible Games Workshop managers, and I've met my fair share of terrible managers.
Yeah.
It's like, get rid of them. I'm less concerned about the dollars they bring in their stores than I am that the stores are popular and professional.
I think we would need to consider them to be, well, they would be brand ambassadors, like in the truest sense, right, for these hypothetical Nexus point stores.
Yes.
So, that's crucial.
That's a really good way of putting it. It's a really, really good way of putting it. That is,
because they are the link, right, from the person who's uninitiated to, the parent who's walking in, right? You got to think of that point of view too, right? You don't want someone who's off-putting. It's like, oh, I don't want my son to be around with these kind of guys or whatever, right? So we definitely want to prioritize professionalism.
You don't want the people that are, representing you to look like a heap of shit. That's the long short of it. And that part of that is attitude. Part of it is the way that they dress. I know it sounds horrible to those who have, giant ear piercings and what have you and all that. Like, I'm cool if you want to dress that way. Just, this is my multi-billion-dollar company now. Unfortunately, I have a legacy I've got to look after here, because it's not just you and your desires and your job that's on the line. It's everyone working for the company.
I don't think it's controversial to say that customers coming into a store don't want to be met with a BO smell or a shitty arse smell, than me, or an attitude, right? or a you need to buy this, you need to buy that, and look down our nose at you sort of an attitude. I think one of the biggest challenges of taking over a company like Games Workshop would be that clear out. It would be going into every store and going, okay, every single store that's staying open, well, we're closing all of them, and we're amalgamating them into a single store, aren't we? So we don't really need to do that. But you would need to look in and say, okay, if we're firing everybody, then we need to give at least, there are some, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, there are some really good Games Workshop managers out there, but at the same time, these are still managers who have been working in an old system, right? But they may not have the mindset and the cutthroatedness to run in our Games Workshop. Do you know what I mean? So even if they are good managers who everyone likes at Games Workshop now, it doesn't mean they're going to work very well in the new Warhammer stores. So it is a really difficult decision to make, because I don't like people losing their jobs. But this isn't real, obviously. But you got to look at it like it is, or it's not going to be a very good exercise. So I would reluctantly agree with that and be like, yeah, we need to probably purge house here, but then invite people to reapply. Say, listen, reapply. and if you were good and you have talk to your community, if they send us emails, if they send us communication saying this is the guy, he was really good, you'll go to the top of the list. We'll get you in there for an interview. And if we think you're the guy, you can be the guy or the girl or whatever. Nicely dressed, smells nice, polite, professional, driven. Right? Those are the people we want. Arse slickers and Games Workshop till I diers. No, you want people with independent thought who are going to represent our brand. Well, this is something that video game companies don't need to do, really. But we do. We're public facing. We need people there who are going to be like, here we are. So it's going to be a big job, but I think it'll be worth it in the long run.
Oh, I totally agree. You need that for that Nexus Point dream to manifest, I think. It's just
now the next thing that I think needs to happen is to start culling the product lines.
Yes.
This is all you, man.
Absolutely.
A wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's absolutely start just...
I agree.
In there with a chainsaw.
I agree, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to agree with most of the things you want to cull. However, since we're doing a friendly takeover, I would suggest we make the Legends platform of Warhammer what it ought to be. Like, it should be a place where rules are preserved and actually able to persist for posterity. That's
existing on Warhammer Community in my world.
Perfect.
It's in there.
Yeah. So
I don't want to get rid of the option for people to play these things.
100%. Okay, cool.
I'm just going to, and I'm going to tell them, this is the key. I'm going to tell them, hey, plan is this models that I'm showing you now, they're not going to be in the next codex. They're going to Legend. And then after they're beating Legends, when we update again, they're gone. Right? So I'm telling you now, in 3 years' time, they're going to be Legends. 3 years after that, they're going to be Thanos snapped from existence. But I'm giving you 6 years notice that that's what's going to occur.
But you'll still have the means to use those models and products through the Legends platform, the hypothetical version of what it ought to be.
Yes,
correct?
It's going to be there. You can still use it. You can still play it. And the rules will always be there, so if you ever want to go back to a previous edition and still use those models, fill your boots. But we can't continue to supply 4 billion SKUs. It's the amount of SKUs that are out there right now is just insane, right?
It's just a practical reality.
We need to start paring them back. Things like Space Marines, Stormcast, that's the low-hanging fruit. But it needs to be done. And then I would look at how I want to run my FOMO projects. I don't want to do more of these. Hey, we're releasing a box with one new model in it, which has become this fad that they just adore, right? Where it's like, look, it's Gazgo and Ragnar. By the way, you can buy all this other crap, but Gazgo and Ragnar. It's like, no. I think that needs to go the way of the dodo as well. What I want to have is I do want to give the Marine players something unique. I want to give them upscaled armor marks for 40k each year. So it's like, this is the year of Thunder Warrior. Next year is the year of Mark II. It will sell like hotcakes.
That's great.
And it's like, it doesn't give you any in-game benefits over running your Primaris Marine armor. But for this year, and this year only, Mark 1 is on sale. And then it's going to go away, and it's going to be Mark 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All those armor marks are going to run through, and it's like, and in 8, 9 years' time, we'll do a second run, and you can buy your Thunder Warriors again. Really will be driving up the FOMO, but also, you've got a year to purchase them. So if you miss them this year, that sucks, but they're going to come back. You just got to have a bit of a wait. So you better get them this year. So it's insipid, but it's not...
It's macro endorsed.
It's not
FOMO.
cool.
Look, you say that, but I'm not opposed to that at all. Like you mentioned the FOMO thing like a disclaimer, but that is what it is. And in the case of what you described, it's not tied to performance on the tabletop. It's not tied to rules. You're not trying to dangle this carrot saying, "Oh, look how strong these new units are. You gotta have it. Gotta have your new Primaris infiltrators because they have the special." Like, there's none of that, right? It's essentially cosmetic for enthusiasts, right? If you like that particular aesthetic, that kind of armor for your chapter or legion or whatever, that's what it's for, right? And I think that's the right way to do FOMO, honestly, right?
I will say this. I will go along with this if the communication is A1. It needs, because what Games Workshop do right now is they do FOMO but with no communication, so you don't know whether it's coming back or not. Like, you don't know. All you know it's never coming back, so you need to get now.
Valid.
Sells out. Right. As long as the marketing team and the PR team are really good at letting people know they will come back. This is just a one print run for this year, and then we're going to move on to the next marks, but they will come back. Right? No problem. Then I'm on board. But that's going to be a challenge to keep ahead of that and to manage that and to say, okay, they are coming back. You haven't got them this year. They will come back. But I think it's a good trade-off to have for the excitement that it will generate of the year of the Thunder Warrior, the year of the Mark II, the Mark III. I think it's a really good idea.
Especially because I would love to have tie-in campaigns. Like,
yes.
this is a famous battle of, the Horus Heresy where this armor was
100%.
present. This is a famous battle of the Scouring where this armor mark was present. Like,
look, that
as
could
long
be
as you
something
give
done
people
on
notice-
Warhammer Community. Crazy, right?
It can. As long as you give people notice, it's not scummy. People won't be upset at you. It's when you try and rug pull them and you go, here's this box set, and they don't know if they're going to be able to buy it. They don't know when it's going to run out. They don't know if you're going to do a second run. When there is just confusion in the air, that's when people get upset. So if you provide pure clarity and you tell them up front, and then after you've done the gear of Thunder Warrior, you do the gear of Crusade armor, people are like, oh, I saw this last year. I understand. Right? Because you're ingraining that behavior in people. You're setting a pattern. You're setting a precedent. They'll understand what they're getting.
The thing also is that people say, well, it's boring doing Horus Heresy because you know what's going to happen. There's not that much wiggle room. No. You make something new. The Talon wasn't a thing until they invented it. You know what I mean? You do something in Scouring. You do a massive Scouring campaign in a sector that's really important to the Imperium. And that's how Armageddon grew. It came out of nowhere. It grew and grew and grew as a thing. It became legendary. That's what you do. You create a new Talon in Horus Heresy for people to fight over in the global campaigns going on. You do it in there is a limitless smorgasbord of things you can do. To really get people involved. And if you marry that with the hard canon that we have, you know what I mean? Now, I think that you generate a ton of excitement as well. And there are going to be people who aren't very happy with Primaris only being an upgrade of not an upgrade sprue, but a mark of armor now. But what it does is it really does give you that solid foundation to build on. To go, okay, well, this is done now, so now we can start. And now, by the way, we encourage you to do fan fiction. We encourage you to do all that stuff because now you're in the sandpit where you know where the limitations are, and that's much more fun and less paralyzing than being like Games Workshop going, just do what you want. No, there are hard and fast rules, but you work within those rules to create something cool. And we showcase that. If you do a really cool one, who's to say we're not going to buy it off you? Go, actually, that's a really good idea for a campaign. Here's some money. We're doing that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You have that dialogue back and forth, these global campaigns, with the community. Maybe even let them design the bloody thing. Less work for us. Say, hey, the first person to give us a sector to fight over in Horus Heresy will be published. Name in the book. Right, we'll pay you, we'll buy it off you, name in the book. That kind of thing. Tangible rewards and communication back and forth. And that would be amazing. If you can combine that communication with, hey, those skills with, hey, yeah, here's the Thunder Warrior armor. It's the year 2025, the year of the Thunder Warrior. If you want your Thunder Warriors, it's for this year only. Next year we're doing Mark 2. And we'll go from there. That's really cool. Do you know what it resembles? It resembles the people who do the hobby are now running the company.
I do
know.
really like that. The next thing I would
Agreed.
be doing in this scenario is I want to move the releases of a system out an additional year, minimum of 4 years for a game system before it gets an update.
Yeah.
And when it gets that update, I don't want to be charging for the rules. Again, you have your Warhammer Community subscription, you get your rules in there. You buy a box set, comes with a code, you get a month for free Warhammer Community. Right?
Nice.
And I'll have my starter box at the start of those editions. I would like to use those starter boxes to do resculpts, not new sculpts. Ideally. Maybe characters I could perhaps have an exception to, but it shouldn't be used to introduce constant new units to the game. Like every time we add something,
Or
we
it
need
creates
to remove
that
something.
skew problem. Yeah, it's inevitable if you keep doing it that way.
The skew bloat is... it's just
Oh, speaking of starter boxes, if I could interject something real quick, can we do something about terrain? Because I can't help but feel terrain's just this massive barrier for most. I don't know if it needs to be a limited terrain pieces at a set period of time, kind of like that FOMO structure we outlined, that just makes acquiring terrain which you need to play the game just more feasible.
I want to return to the old sort of 4th edition era. Hey, here's a whole bunch of ways you can make terrain for your table. By the way, we sell terrain. Show it to them in the rulebook. Show it to them on the box. Don't just have it all being corporate branded Games Workshop terrain in the artwork on the back of a box. Show them on the occasional flat green, flock table with a couple of pine trees off a H-scale railway set. Show them that. Like they did in the old books, right? Show them how they can cut out foam card and spray paint it, right?
Yeah,
Show
you want to
them
bring
that
back the
3D
hobby.
printing exists. Don't stick your head in the sand. Like I want to turn the company from the current company, which is you will buy what we tell you to buy, into, hey, we know that 3D printing and all that is out there, but we're not worried about it because we're delivering you such a great customer experience. The majority of you are going to love us so much you want to keep shopping with us. You want to show us that support, right? Because you're happy with the product you're getting and you feel like you're not being judged by us as lesser because you didn't spend on the new hotness. Like, bring back that community, bring back that actual hobbying element of, like, build your own table, like, encourage that in your community. Don't just pretend like all these other things don't exist. Foster it. Be like, yeah, it's awesome. We're happy that you're building tables to play your miniatures on. Hey, bring your friends around. Why don't you get the friends to come into the store, buy a box set, take it home, and then play it on the table you built? Rather than turning the nose down at them going, it's not a Games Workshop table.
Yeah, I would add to that, like, could you imagine you go to these different various Nexus points, like these stores that you described, North, in the way that you described them, where, you might be passing through a town, and you stop by, their Warhammer flagship store, and then, holy shit, you could be, like, imagine the kind of tables you might find going from one store to another, right? If you have that kind of hobby-first mentality, right? Because it'd be totally different. Like, because you'd have different store managers, different communities coming together to effectively bring these clubs. That's what they would be, right? They'd be your friendly local gaming clubs.
That's the entire
to
point.
Life.
That is the entire point. Is that everything that we do has to marry into everything else. Games Workshop right now is very compartmentalized. It's almost like the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing a lot of the time, and they tend to just go along with that as if it's this is fine. This is all good. So everything needs to marry into everything else. Everything needs to be understandable, transparent. Everyone knows what we're doing, and with being a Nexus, that is exactly what it needs to be like. Everything needs to have a tangible here, there. This is where we're going. So same thing with the with Twitch, right? If we're doing Twitch, which I'm guessing we are doing Twitch because and things like that. It all needs to, how do I put it? Well, marry in would be the best way. Yeah, my original way of putting it.
I'm indifferent on Twitch. I don't actually know what Games Workshop does over there. I don't really check it out.
I'll be honest with you. I said if we're doing it because I don't want to. I don't want to be in bed with Twitch.
Yeah, I don't particularly like them as a platform, if I'm honest.
No, too many bad associations with that platform.
Yeah.
I don't want.
I would say
agreed. So it's agreed. We're pulling out of Twitch. Perfect.
We pay for it. We pay for the equipment. We pay for the models. We pay for the space at Warhammer World. Fuck them. It's going on Warhammer World. You know, like it's going on Warhammer Plus. Don't need them. You're literally cutting your own knees off if you stream anything. YouTube as well. Sorry, YouTube. We are cutting our own knees off if you stream things on platforms that aren't ours. Simple as. You know, if we run ads, we can get to choose what ads go on there rather than YouTube or Twitch doing it, because you never know what they're putting on there. You know. So yeah, that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I agree. Like, and if you're streaming stuff out to platforms like a YouTube, well, that's fine. What are they going to pay me for it?
Yeah, get your wallet out.
Yep.
It ain't free.
Spoil me, and then we can talk. You know.
Yeah. Here's a sidebar, but I would really like, from a hobbyist point of view, I would like a separate website for the IP, or rather the games, separate from the store. And now I know there is a website for 40K and the Horus Heresy, but that doesn't do shit for me when I'm trying to when I want to look at models and see how units are painted and constructed, right? I think we need a game system first website separate from a store, if that makes sense, right? The amount of times that I've wanted to look up a model to see, you know, just how it's painted. Oh, how did the store guys, the heavy metal guys paint this? And then I try to go look at it, and it's a pre-order weekend, so I can't. I literally just can't look at the model, right? That should not be a thing. It should be always accessible. The means to look at how models are, the models and units specifically. I don't know if that's as big of a sticking issue for you guys, but I think that would go a long way with hobbyists and gamers to have a website separate for those two separate purposes.
If you want to talk website, like, that's a whole other kettle of fish.
Oh, for sure. I just want to put that seed out there. I want to separate those.
I mean, I don't see a huge problem with it. Like, but also, I think we need to be careful, because sometimes customers like having all in one place. To me,
okay, that's a fair point. What if that's where you? What if we can do that through Warhammer Plus, right? So you have your store, you have Warhammer Plus, and because you're paying for Warhammer Plus, you can just have access to all of your unit data sheets would be there anyways, right? So why not have? You can look at the units and their data sheets, like easy peasy.
Yeah. That's more like it. I like that. Yeah. Cool stuff. What are we covering next? Not in this video. Like, what are we going for next?
So, well, I guess I'll continue on with the whole rules thing. So, for yearly editions, I do want to have my sort of benchmark systems, like my Horus Heresy, my Age of Sigma, my Warhammer 40,000 as an annual release, mid-year, major release for each system. I want to add Warhammer the Old World in as a fourth one on my 4-yearly cycle. I then want to also have my secondary releases around that, basically being the other 6 months. So coming into Christmas, that's where I want my specialist games to be looked at.
That makes sense. That's a good idea.
So I'm going to have basically 2 big 6-monthly, like, this is going to be where we see our sales ramp up. That space in between, that's where I want my annual, like, here is the, you know, the year of the Thunder Warrior, like, bang, that's where that happens.
Mm-hmm.
My other big release that I want is I want to do my revisits of factions at that other period in time, like say Easter, right? Some 3 months, past Christmas. Hey, look, we've done Eldar, now Dark Eldar are coming out. Rather than tying them into the new edition, as like that's when they get their range refresh, I want people to know that there's going to be a major faction refresh in that 3rd month for a system at a minimum. So that it's something that becomes looked forward to every year, like, oh my god, who's it going to be? What's it going to be, right? And knowing that it's not tied to the start box. Because the problem with the start box is, when you do a refresh in that box, people understand that, okay, the faction in that is going to get a lot of love for a few months, and then it's done and dusted. And that's going to be the antithesis faction for this entire edition.
Well, in
like,
air quotes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like you get your Necrons. It's like, okay, that's it. The Necrons are the one for this edition. Like, so is any other faction that's not the Imperium going to get something? Maybe. Sure. Let's move away from that. So the releases become a lot more consistent. With that said, I also want those releases in my mind to be like, hey, we're not just making this army better than everything else that's out there, but we're going to write really good rules. We want the power curve between our factions to be really consistent, so you don't feel like you're being left in the dust constantly. And we don't want you to feel like you have to buy huge hoarder armies to make your army playable. I want to provide a way for every faction to be able to bring some tools to the game that allow them to buy smaller armies to ease the introduction into the hobby, or to get people to consider changing from their current faction to an additional faction. So, for example, orcs. I don't want you to feel like you have to buy 40 orc boys, to play a 500-point game. I'm obviously exaggerating here. But I want to encourage you to go, hey, you see that cool marine tank over there? Want to loot it?
Oh, dude. Yeah, I love
like,
that. I love everything you said.
Yeah. Yeah, let's bring back that approach to the hobby, where it's like we're asking them to actually convert and play hobby. Because when you say to people, like, you can convert, they'll immediately start looking at other boxes in the store and going, what bits can I use from that? That's just the natural inclination of people. But also, it lets them take things from, say, other factions, like in the case of orcs, and they get to play with it anyway. They're like, I don't really want to collect Eldar. I don't see myself having an army, but yeah, I could put a fire prism in my orc army. That could be fun.
Hell yes, dude. Love that.
And it just eases that burden where it's like, okay, you're not just painting a sea of green boys. Like, you can paint some other stuff in there, and all of a sudden we've turned it from a horde army into, like, yeah, it's still a horde army at the big end if you want to go that route, but also we've now got the viable entry point for you at a low points level. Same as like Tyranids, There needs to be mid-tier Tyranid units, so it's like, okay, you don't need to have hordes of Hormgaunts and Termagants. Like, look, here is these units, which are kind of like Tyranid warriors. It's like, you just get a few of these, and it's going to bulk out your points nicely, and you're not going to be sabotaging yourself on the tabletop doing so.
Yeah, you can still play. You can still play a fair game.
Exactly. I also want to... Yeah, go.
I wanted to talk about that you said about cycles before 4 years. I'm going to be honest, I don't think 4 years is enough. I think there's something we can drill on in here, and that is rules writing, that we haven't mentioned yet. It's one of the big elephants in the room that we're kind of sidestepping. The rules need to be made for purpose, and I would actually say every edition should be either half a decade or even a decade in terms of length. We need to spend that time between editions working and stress testing the next edition with the codexes. They all need to come out at the same time. Codexes are out at the start of an edition with the rule book. Say, this
definitely
is
definitely at the start of the edition. I do agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the 4 yearly cycle is not we are moving to 11th edition. No, I want a living rule set. When you get to like the middle of the year, that's going to be, hey, here is the latest update to the core rules of the game system. Here's what we are changing. Right?
Yeah. That was better.
Yeah, it's not because like I said, all these rules, they're going for free into Warhammer Community. Like, you're paying your subscription, but you're getting everything. We're not paywalling all the rules anymore like they were. So when you're doing this approach, it's because I want to have that living rule set where it's like, okay, everything is having its update now. But it's like all of your stuff is still relevant, you know? Like, we're not just throwing it all out immediately because we got to the end of the edition. Like, it's a soft edition launch. It's not 11th edition, it's 10.5 edition. Right? And then we'll look at doing a major overhaul where we really shake things up in several years' time, because there shouldn't be a need to do a major overhaul to an edition that fundamentally changes the game unless you're willing to admit that you fuck-handed the game to the degree where the only redemption is, oh no, we need to do a hard reset because we're hemorrhaging players again, because cycle repeated, somehow we failed to listen to everyone and now they're annoyed at us. I don't know how it happened.
Yeah, well, I think that's the right approach. Yeah, the current landscape just has edition cycles just so we can restart the hamster wheel, the codex hamster wheel, right? That's basically what it's there for. Because things aren't actually as broken. Yeah, like I kind of often bring up the persistent neglect that GW is happy to just keep in systems so they have something to prop when they want to push a new edition. But really, it's just to resell codexes for another round. That's why we have edition resets, because it's pretty clear that that's when the new editions arise, right? It's all been planned around that business model. But if we have rules structured the way they are on a subscription base, there's no hard need for a reset in that same way. So we can have a healthier gaming ecosystem, I think.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
I also, in addition to this, have teams whose whole job is you're looking after this game system. You're not looking after Heresy and 40k and C1. No. You're on the Heresy team. You can transfer to another team, but you are devoted to this team. Don't go eyeballing what they're doing over there. And I want the entire team to be working together and playtesting constantly these books. So they're not just pump and dumping these codexes onto the consumer marketplace. I don't want any more minimum viable product in my new company. What I want to see is functioning products where every release that comes out, people are happy with the release, because I don't want them to all go out and FOMO purchase that on impulse on day one, realize that, holy crap, my army is just, berserkers and 8-bound. This is kind of sucks, because I want people to go like, hey, all factions are supported equally. There is incentive for me to keep revisiting the army and purchasing more for it. So I want to be seeing my factions to be at least in the 12 kits on launch. At least. Because I think 12 is that minimum point where an army becomes playable. And that's low points, 12. So, but that's what it needs to be. This whole current business, like World Eaters, where it's 6 units, that's half of what I consider to be a minimum playable force. And I say this because it's you've got like I said last night, you've got your major faction character, your minor faction character. These are your named guys. Then you got your generic character, your lesser generic character. You need to have your support characters in there somewhere. And then you need to have your units that cover off on all slots. And all slots is elite infantry that either are close combat, or elite infantry that are ranged. Regular infantry, ranged heavy infantry, a vehicle or monstrous unit of some kind, a fast or cavalry unit of some kind, and an aircraft unit of some kind, or an anti-air of some kind. If you do not have these things at a minimum, these 12 things, you do not have a faction.
That's reasonable.
So, yeah.
They don't all have to be the same, it don't have to be well, this is the...
Yeah, we wouldn't want them to be either.
Tower Flyer, but, there is nothing stopping you from having something that fulfills the same function. Okay, they didn't get a flyer, but what they got was a kick-ass anti-air system instead, so that we are still varying up the factions, but it's you need these things for a faction to be viable. So the rules need to be done with that in mind, and they should be just constantly playtesting these things against one another and taking the feedback on board and telling people hey, we will be doing an FAQ in 6 months for these codexes. so that they know that they're going to get over the 4-year period before the whole core rulebook is getting a look at. They're probably going to go through 8 FAQ cycles. So it's not this day one stuff, because it shouldn't need to be a day one FAQ. FAQ should be for the unforeseen. And we need to get people who know how to write properly, rules that is, on board. We can't have any more of this. In the event that this unit hasn't shot this turn and has not been the target of an existing attack, and in the unlikely event that blah, 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 this like waterboarding of special rules that they do right now, like, that's got to go. I'm sorry, that just has to go. So I think if you can do all of these approaches, you will tidy up a lot of the rules, because you won't be having, like I said, the need for day one FAQ, because you're not hitting the shelves broken. It should be only FAQing the unforeseen. Thoughts?
It's all pretty agreeable, honestly.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's about fairness, and it's about every single edition. So I covered this the other day in that if you have a 3 to 4 year edition cycle, let's say, you're releasing your codexes as they come out. That means there are certain armies that are only going to have their codexes for 6 months, and that's not value for money, So I think doing it this way, in having and I suppose standing by your rules too, and saying, listen, okay, here is the edition. What edition is it? There isn't one. It's Warhammer 40,000. This is it, right? So having that gives everybody solid foundation. Everybody knows where they are. The next update is coming, and it's a small book update. Here you go. There you go. You're ready to go. I think it's just a much better way of doing it.
I think it mitigates the issue of, like, how do you term it? Like sequel fatigue almost. Like it becomes like the 3 edition or the 3 year cycles, or I don't know if they're on 3 years or 4 years these days, but the speed at which we are accruing numbers to the edition count here is kind of baffling, and it does kind of like dilute the significance of what that should be. Like, a new edition should be a major deal, man. Like, it shouldn't just be this turning of the seasons, right? Like, you can have seasons in an edition. How about that, right? But you don't just
in the last. Sorry, Kaifa. Just that point. In the last 14 years, we've gone through 6 editions. Right?
Mm-hmm.
In the first 14 years of the game, we went through 3.
Yeah,
so, I take that how you will.
Yeah, I think it should be switching that claim, right? That news article headline of a new edition of Warhammer 40,000 should be a major deal, right? And it's kind of become normal, which is backwards. I think you guys would probably agree with that. So you can just have that persistent edition, save, that card to play, the new edition hype for when it's deserved, and then you can basically just have seasons instead, right? If you must, right? And you probably there is another sort of elephant in the room, like to North's point, and that's like managing the competitive stuff. And I would almost want to, in the same way Maka wants to offload like the corporate handling of business managing, I would want to offload the tournament scene. We should have a group of tournament experts to just manage a sliced down version of what they want that to be.
Here's what I do with that.
It's a different game mode, effectively, right?
Yeah.
And then they can handle it, keep the rules they want, remove the ones they don't.
I would actually go to a guy like Vanguard Tactics,
and
I'd say, okay, you've basically done everything but suck us off for the past 20 years, so why don't we just give you a job? Right? No offense, mate, but you love the hobby. Listen, okay, if you love the hobby, fine. Here's a job. Your job is now head of tournaments. You're head of competitive. That's what you do, right? Speak for the scene. You have your own team. You organise your own tournaments. You want to go to the grand tournaments, things like that. We'll do our official tournaments too, right? We'll open that up. That is now what you do. because I don't think any of us are really that into the tournament scene, the competitive scene, quote unquote, for 40k. And Maka does Heresy, but that's another thing entirely. So like, why don't we compartmentalize that? Off you go over there, and I would be very up for, and I've campaigned for this before, having different forms of 40k. Like you have your baseline 40k, which is about getting around a table with your mates, telling cool stories on the tabletop, having fun with beer and pretzels, blowing shit up on the tabletop. That's what it's all about, right? Old school 40k. That's mainstream. But we also have a crunchy version with rules upon rules upon rules and keywords and keywords and keywords and loads of gotchas in there for the tournament scene that you actually have to be really good at, arithmetic and memory and things like that, and tactics to be able to actually play the game at a competitive level. I would split those two apart.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to compartmentalize it, as you said.
Yeah, I don't think... and again, our original 40k shouldn't be dumbed down. Right? I'm not saying that. What I am saying is 40k, if you want really grindy games, then there should be a place for that. Absolutely. You go and do that, no problem.
Yeah, I think the reality of the hypothetical demands we need to deal with that. That's part of the baggage, right? We have this competitive kind of beast to kind of figure out how to deal with, and I think you compartmentalize it. And if looted orc vehicles can't work in competitive, then that's the line they draw for competitive play as a mode. It's not something that's removed from the hobby wholesale, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's pretty agreeable.
Back where you reckon?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, at the end of the day, to me, it's I want to increase the players' happiness in the company, right? You notice I've said very little on pricing here. I want to increase the consumer confidence in the company, increase their happiness with this, draw back some of those older players who are pissy at their treatment, right? And rules are just another means to this end, right? Because if we can get their confidence up enough, then all of the competition that we have, like 3D printing, starts to get sidelined because people will say the trade-off is, well, look, yeah, the prices are kind of expensive, but geez, they're not a bad company now. They've really turned over a new leaf. The rules are better than they've ever been. It's just more easy and convenient to just order from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want that loyalty to continue, right? The customers would have a vested interest in wanting the company to persist, right? Rather than if 3D printing's here, there's alternatives. I don't play competitive anyways. I'll just play an older edition, right? I feel like there's a lot of that attitude around now, right? A lot of people are just happy to, if Games Workshop isn't around, they'll just continue Warhammer in their own way through their own means, with third-party sculpts, 3D printing, and older editions. And that's not the outcome I think any of us would want. Certainly not in the hypothetical where we own things, right? So yeah, I'm on board with this. I like this. I like everything we're talking about.
Again, it's not a matter of bringing down prices necessarily. You don't have to go down that route if you get people to buy more things. If you sustain the prices at the current level for longer, rather than relying on just constantly bumping them up to cover for the hemorrhaging of players, it will go a long way. I'd also like to reintroduce loyalty programs. So again, like skulls, because it's pennies on the dollar to produce these kits, right? If I'm running, how many people are going to be on there purchasing of 100 kits that year, right? Probably not many. So if I've already got, the tactical marine mold in one of my machines and it's spitting out one every, couple of minutes, how much is it really costing me to take one of those and go, here, give this to that player who bought 100 kits for free? He's going to be wrapped. It costs me cents to do it,
Yeah.
To me, it's just crazy that they don't have a loyalty program like Skulls, a points-based system on the website where, hey, we're keeping track of the orders. You've got X amount of Warhammer dollars to spend. Take a discount on a kit. it's not going to hurt your bottom line. And people, it's like video game psychology. Once they see that, like, oh, I'm accruing points here, the more I spend, again, where are they going to go to? They're going to come to you, because they're going to go, you know what? If I come to you, like, I'm accruing more of these points, I'm getting a discount. I'm actually getting a good deal here. It's like girl math, you know? When your wife goes out and she goes, oh, I was going to buy this $40 thing, but if I bought the $50 one, then I get 20% off my next order. Well, that's just good maths, you know?
It's the old, I'm saving money if I don't buy it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, again, if we convince them to, and you could have things like the Warhammer Plus, you know, special edition models. You can do that. You can have an anniversary model. It doesn't have to have this. This is the thing they forget. Models do not need to have rules on the tabletop. They just have to be collectible. All those Warhammer Fantasy Battle standard bearers that you used to get, like, you guys would probably remember these for decades. You had your battle formations that you could buy at the start of any new army book for Warhammer Fantasy. You could buy a big box and it had all the stuff in it, and it always had a limited edition character. It was one of the major selling points for that box. People just wanted that character, right? You can bring that mentality back of like, hey, this is the character for anyone who purchases 100 boxes of Warhammer this year from a store. Like, we log you in the system, when you've done 100 purchases, ba-boom, there you go. There's your character, right? Purchases must be over, you know, $20 minimum. Something like that. And I would bet you any amount of money out of my trillions that I obviously have after I bought Games Workshop, that would be a highly successful strategy. Because again, the customer feels like they're not being taken for schmucks who just exist to spend on the company. Instead, they're like, hey, I'm actually getting given free stuff now, where in the past that didn't happen. I just paid high prices and I just got what I got. Now I'm getting free things.
Feels good, right?
Cheaper things. It's a feels good moment. But again, what do you guys think?
Well, I think it makes sense. Like many of the things we're just describing, it just seems logical, right? And I think there's a bit of a template for this already, because there seems to be a certain amount of resources already allocated to creating these Black Library anniversary models that not always have rules, right? You see, like, a lot of these Catachan characters that we've seen in the last few years come to mind, right? These, like, special, get them only at this event kind of items, right? I can't recall the names of them offhand, but I think you guys can recall what I'm talking about. The various Catachan commanders that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, dude, if the perception is that you're getting free, in air quotes, stuff because I'm spending money already, yeah, why not? Yeah, and it would go a long way towards creating that kind of goodwill that the customers are kind of desperate for. And that's sort of a theme of what we've been talking about today, I think. Right? We're just trying to implement changes that create goodwill on the customer side.
Yes. That's what it is. It's I'm rebuilding the very, I think, shaky brand loyalty. Where customers right now tolerate Games Workshop, they don't love Games Workshop.
Well,
some do.
I think, look,
but
I've said it in various areas of the internet, various corners, but I think the people who, like, love Games Workshop it might be like an under duress sort of circumstance. It might be a bit of a Stockholm syndrome kind of love. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think you're just kind of trapped and held hostage a little bit.
We'll put it this way, Kaifa. All those that absolutely hate the company and what it's become, think how many people you have played the game with and no longer play the game. That's the point you don't want people to hear. Right?
Yeah.
The people who picked it up and they've now abandoned it. Because people say, oh, people love Games Workshop, they're doing better than ever. You go, yeah, well, you know, there's a billion more people living in the world now. These types of hobbies are far more socially acceptable. You've got all the cards lay on the table, but think how many people they had won and lost over the years. You know, like, that counts towards something. And you would probably find that if you actually knew how many people had picked up and hemorrhaged the hobby over the years, I would say it's probably 5 times as many as are in it.
Quite possible. I'm sure you guys get the same kind of comments that indicate that as I do, where it's just people like, "Oh, I used to play through editions X through Y, stopped because I just
all the time.
Yeah,
all the time.
Yeah, and think how many of them there are. Like our audiences are people who are still into the hobby, but just think about your friends. You like, for me, I think of the guys that I grew up in, primary school and high school playing it with. I'm the last one out of like a dozen friends that at some points were playing in, second, third, fourth era. By the time 5th edition, they were all gone. It was just me, from that original like friendship group. And
right.
This trend needs to be reversed. So rebuilding that shattered brand confidence, where some of those people want to come back, and showing that loyalty. So we're moving away from the recruit at all costs mentality. I want to flip it on its head, right? Because right now, North, you use the bucket analogy, where you said you got the bucket's full of holes, you're pouring water in, the water that leaks out the bottom is the existing customers leaving, and the water coming in is the fresh customers. I want to sort of do a 180 on this, where it's like, no, I want to show the existing customers they are valued, and I'm going to assume that fresh customers are going to come in more easily. Because they're going to see my stores, and they're going to see how happy people are playing my game, and they're going to see all this cross-media saturation in your Henry Cavills, and they're going to go, I'm already 90% of the way there, as opposed to the store manager having to, like, drag a kid in out of some dingy alleyway and, hold a knife to their throat as they say, you gotta buy some fucking starter sets! Like, let's get away from that.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's no other better way to increase the confidence of someone on the fence than to see how well the current clientele are being treated, right? I think that's like a universal in business.
Well, if you have middle-aged men, we're all 30s. If you've got guys in our age brackets, like we're the age that has money, and kids. Right now, there's an awful lot of people in that bracket who are disenfranchised and disenchanted with Games Workshop. If you win them back, instead of them saying like, I used to like Warhammer, but I can't pay these prices and I hate the company. Instead, they're like, hey, I'm going to buy models for me and my kids. Ta-da! They just became your new brand ambassador in that household.
Yeah.
Like,
true.
It's that simple to me. So if you are showing through your actions that you're supporting the community more, it will do so much more for the system. And again, it weakens your competition, because the competition now has to keep up with you. What are they going to bring to the table that's better than what you're offering? You're offering now a solid game system. You're offering faction support that's pretty consistent across all game systems. You're not just going, hey, it's Tuesday, time for another Marine release, You're making sure that customers have ways of having their loyalty seen, whether it's through little badges they can earn, whether it's through getting reward points, whether it's through getting free units gifted to them, The whole thing is about building that customer engagement. So when things like the 3D printing revolution has completely tsunamied and it's really easy to print at home, people are still coming to you because they don't feel like they've surpassed the need for you anymore. They actually come to you because they enjoy working with you. They enjoy coming to your company. They enjoy spending money at your company. It's nostalgic to them. It makes them happy to do so. And they don't feel like they're being held over the barrel doing it. Instead, they're happy to give you the money. They feel like they're actually getting the good deal out of it. That's what I want.
Yeah, and that's all realistic, right? It's not it's not impossible.
No, and again, at no point in this have I said that I'm going to, your units will be 1/4 of the current price. No, I don't need to go that route. I just need to hold the prices.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that earlier too. It's like I don't think that there's easier ways to kind of fix things. I think that are more important, as we kind of outlined in the conversation here.
Yeah. And when it comes to things like executives and executive management, like I said, I want to put people who understand the hobby, but also understand business in there. I don't want to have people who purely understand business and then make their decisions in a vacuum that has disastrous consequences. I don't want people who understand the hobby and prioritize it over the business. It needs to be mutual, you know. I would also be looking at my manufacturing, and honestly, Nottingham is not the place for the majority of the manufacturing. I don't want to gut the traditional workforce that is there. But at the same time, we need to look at other solutions, because England is very, very expensive labour market, and you're selling your products into multiple countries. So how about, instead of shipping around the world and paying for ludicrous UK energy prices, let's start setting up production in multiple countries. Australia, America, like proper production, that is, not just like token production, so that like we can meet the demands in those markets, and you'll avoid things like, you know, international tariffs and such, because hey, you're manufacturing in that country. Let's diversify it a little bit. I'm not saying like fire everyone in Nottingham and move all production to China or something. That would be absolutely silly. But like isolating it to there, like British energy prices are insane.
Right. Yeah.
And the company is the most dependent thing they are is it's like 6 times higher than where it is in Australia. It's insane. It's the number one thing they're dependent on in their production is electricity. So get out of there. As much of like, you know, move the stuff that's less important, like, I don't know, base manufacturing, terrain manufacturing, things like that. Let the UK focus on, like, you know, this is where the Space Marines are made. Something like that, you know? Like, don't try and expand. I think building more factories in the UK under just the horrible production, like, it's not conducive to production in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
We'll put it that way.
It's just
it's
a tough constraint.
Been that way for decades.
Yeah, but if you build a factory in Australia, like, or in the United States, if you build it in the right place and you put solar panels on it, like, you're going to offset an awful lot more electricity than what the solar panels in Nottingham are doing all 3 days of the year when the sun comes out in Old Blighty, you know? Like, and packaging. Let's look at packaging. What can we do to cheapen up the packaging? Because that itself is a killer. Like, it's nice to have boxes on the shelf that are all pretty and labeled and inked and all that, but do we have to? Like, is there a better way of doing it? I'm sure there would be, you know, such as bulk packaging, putting more things in the same size box, or making larger boxes with a lot of stuff in it, like encouraging that army purchases rather than having so many of the same small box. Like, you just, it's ways of hemorrhaging money, right? Just yeah, lots of little things like that could be improved upon. Just so much so. And the constant like need to bring out new stuff that they have currently, it just destroys production, let me tell you. If like, it takes hours to change out molds correctly in a machine and do the maintenance on those molds. If you're constantly bringing out new things, I've got a bunch of my team whose whole job it is just to make those molds and get them like tested, trial them out. I have to have a few machines put aside just for testing new products, making constant modifications to those. Those guys, my die setters, aren't out there working on the dies being swapped out in my machines on the floor. You know, they're not doing the preventative maintenance that keeps more of my machines operational, less them from going offline. They're not doing upkeep and maintenance on my dies that have just come out and have like little bits of gunk stuck in them. That's the scientific term. You know, the more mold changes I have to do, the worse off I am. So let's get proper levels of stock held, and so we have things to dispatch, and my website is not 80%. This is currently out of stock. You know, like, but that's, I don't know about where you guys are, because it's different from region to region, but
oh, it's the norm. It's the norm, dude. Yeah,
like, so again, we tone down the amount of new releases to a less insane level. We can fix a lot of those problems and do proper long runs of product. Because if I was the actual production manager working for them right now, I'd be just ripping my hair out. I'd be completely bald by this point, because there is no way if you've only got 60 odd molding machines, there is no way you can be producing thousands of SKUs somehow and yet also be accounting for the constant influx of new stuff that needs to go through the designing, the testing, all that. And I guess
that's the production side. The last thing I would look at is the website itself and the way that we actually track that production. So why aren't there barcode systems, robots and QR codes in these warehouses properly accounting for the amount of stock being made and allocating it, so that, you know, you would have seen this before. I hear plenty of stories, North can probably confirm or deny, that people go into Warhammer World and be like, hey, have you got this? And they go, oh, actually, we don't have any in stock. And people are like, but it says it's in stock.
Well, like,
You know?
yeah, the Warhammer World was an egregious example, because you would get that. It didn't happen to me, but it would happen to you'd hear stories all the time, and you'd also have mates who'd work at Warhammer World who'd be really frustrated because you know what they'd get told? Somebody would come in and say, hey, do you have this Blood Bowl team? No, it's not in stock, sorry. But you make it here. You make it next door. How is not? You know what I mean? Like that kind of a thing. They would have to all those questions all the time. Why I think this supply and demand you're talking about is so important. I'm getting this. This is not my wheelhouse. Like, making models isn't my wheelhouse. Selling them and writing lore is, but making models isn't it? But getting that streamlined. Also, I wanted to bring up made to order as well. Is that something we're going to be jiving with, or is that something we want to put on the back burner? Because I'm not sure how it really coincides with us saying, hey, this is the year of Thunder Warriors. If you do made to order, then people will say, well, I want my Thunder Warriors next year. Why can't I just get it made to order? Do you know what I mean? It would open up that can of worms. So are we going with make to order because it would solve a lot of problems, or are we sticking with the current?
My production inclination for made to order is that I would turn it into basically like a September-ish. I'd be doing my made to orders, and it'd just be a random conglom of units from the old back catalogue, and it will essentially be a case of, hey, these are Christmas stunners. Every year we're going to release a bunch of, you know, older stuff from stock. We don't intend to have it in production for any period of time, but we're going to run it. You've got September and you've got October to place your orders, and we'll be making a run and we'll be shipping at Christmas time. So you've got a neat, you know, model for Christmas. Here's the old school Nagash, you know, like,
right,
whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But you're doing it, and it's not a made to order anymore. It's a special event that you do each year as like our Christmas crackers. These are our Christmas crackers for, you know, 2026. And it's like, here's, you know, because that production can bear. Production will know what they are up front. Will already have the molds prepped and ready to go. And you're giving people a couple of months lead time. So you're not just dropping on them and saying, you've got a week for this. And you can also use your Warhammer community to lead up to it and say, hey, don't forget, Christmas Crackers is coming in September. It's already July. What have you put aside for it? Keep it in mind. We're going to be re-releasing a bunch of older models. So it's got elements of FOMO, but again, you're warning people. You're not just dropping it in their lap like a hot turd and just saying, like, hey, sorry you only have $20 in your bank account, but you've got a week to decide whether or not you're going to spend it on this. Get fucked. That's the current system, and it's not great. So move away from made to order and more into, we're doing a special event. You can be a part of it too. Or is that too insidious?
I don't think so. No, it's definitely more consumer friendly the way you're describing it. Right? Because right now, if I recall correctly, that's kind of how their made to order works, just on a more awkward time scale. I think it's like six or 7 months. And it is, I believe, as kind of arbitrarily selected, like as random. Right? You'll get, like, I think the last made to order they did was trenches, the old trench terrain from like 5th or 6th. So you do get that kind of behavior now. So yeah, I don't think that's bad. I think it'd be nice, right? Like, the reality is you can't keep things in production forever. So if we're able to, if GW is able to, every now and again to bring back a classic. Now, I don't love how it appears how price gouged those classics are, and I don't know if there's some practical necessity for that.
I think logically, you're going to charge a premium because it's going to be more
Mhm.
power intensive because you've got a physical person involved in the process. But at the same time, I'd be trying to do one model per faction, like keeping it pretty restrained, and I'd be looking after my big game systems. Honestly, I don't know that I want to look after all the legacy specialist games, but if I look after my big 4 game systems, not even like really, it's old world, and it's 40k. Age of Sigmar, Horus Heresy, they're too new. They don't really have a back catalogue of amazing, like, legacy, nostalgic 30-year-old miniatures. But Fantasy Battles and 40k do. So I immediately have cut my workload right down in that regard. And I would just be like, hey, remember 2nd edition Marnie's Kelgar? Like, here he is. Do you want to buy it? Like, more that sort of thing. So if we're doing that with production, logically, like I said, you need to have a system where it can be scanned in, you know exactly the amount of product produced and boxed up, and then it's going into the computer system. That means actually having a working website. I'm outsourcing that shit.
Yeah.
I'm not rebuilding and using the same building blocks of this current website, which is like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a old wooden bridge that has collapsed, and then like they've come along and just like put bits of tree trunk and rope over to like make it work again, and then it's been washed away in a flood, and they've just kept repeating this process until there's basically just this horrible bastardized photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. That is the current website. It's just gotten objectively worse for like 3-4 updates straight. So no, I'm killing it, and I'm giving it to someone who understands proper inventory management and who understands how to cut down SKUs and bloat properly. So something like what's that American supermarket chain? Not Walmart.
Target.
It'll come to me. No, not Target. They do like tons of bulk deals and such.
Costco.
Yes, Costco. Costco really has cut down. They only have a surprisingly small number of SKUs and very efficient website. So I'll be looking at like who they worked with, something like that as inspiration, or telling the web designers like, hey, you're web designers, you know how to do this really well. Here's what I want. Like, make it happen and you'll get paid correctly. Don't make it happen. Don't expect to get anywhere near the money. You know, we'll draw this shit out in court, because the current system is just untenable. It's a shit show. It's terrible when there's a big release getting onto the website. It doesn't actually keep like live stock management is something nearly every other website can do. You know, you go to car parts car parts joints, right? I know what they're called in your countries, but you know, here we got like Repco, Autobarn, Super Cheap Auto, like, you know, it's like they'll tell you like we have 5 of this filter for this model engine in stock. Cool, done. Yeah, Games Workshop doesn't tell you that. It just says in stock, not in stock. That's it. You know, they don't even know what the stock levels are. Display it, like 22 of these left. You know, and again, that might incentivize.
I wonder if they do. They just don't want you to know.
Well, if they think very little of the customer, they'll think that if you can see that there's more than one in stock, you might not panic buy it. True, but I'd be more inclined to think that if you see there is only one in stock, you will panic buy it. So,
yeah, I suppose it goes both
just knowing
ways.
human psychology. Yeah, it goes both ways. I'd rather show people what the stock limits are.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, yeah. For the hypothetical, I'm with you.
Yeah. And again, it's transparency.
Yeah.
The customer.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking here, but I don't want to make this a my episode, so I feel like I should just shut up for a bit and let you guys
No.
throw some ideas out.
So what it is that we've gone on to model manufacturing, and we have very little expertise there, so we're really much relying on your
yes, that is correct.
Input. That's what it is. Like we don't really have any. I have nothing to say because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think we all like do our fair share of talking about rules and how things ought to be and everything around that sort of space. But that's not the hard part of this kind of hypothetical. I think what's more challenging is like the stuff that we're getting into that we have been getting in because we've done very little like regular talk about rules problems, right? In today's conversation.
But we can do
that's
it as
easy.
a guest style talk. It doesn't need to be going down into, well, this one rule here. No. That's why we employ people. Right? You know, this is why you. One of the first things I'd be doing in that studio is saying, look, you know, anyone. Okay, who writes the law? That's one thing I'd want to know. Okay, can somebody tell me who writes the law? You're all fired. I'm just saying, like, who writes the law? And I think it would be pointing every which way. Oh well, Dave does it if he's got a moment, or you know, no. We have dedicated teams to doing certain things. You know what I mean? So rules writers should be talking with law people to get the flavour of the rules correct, but rules writers should not be writing law, right? You should be going into actual writers, actual people with actual talent and passion for the hobby who have a brain screwed on, who say, right, okay, we give them bullet points, like what Maka did before. Okay, Primaris are now no longer an upgrade, they are simply an armor set. Right, wind that back, okay? Cadia is not destroyed yet, we might do it later, but we wind that back. So you pull it all back to a certain frame in time, and we say, build that, please. Right, and then obviously it goes through different checks. No longer can you have books like you don't give writers the head to do what they want. So, for instance, Clone Grim, right? Clone Fulgrim. If that came across my desk, let's say that's what I'm doing at our version of Games Workshop. If that came across my desk, I'd be like, "Well, are you high? Are you high? Like we can't do this without releasing a model, or without addressing it in the law going forward."
There's too many implications.
And no longer are we going to edge our audience, you know what I mean? Unless we've got a payoff. I mean, right? If you don't have the intention to bring back Fulgrim as a perfect clone, don't fucking write it. That would be the one. Sorry, I'm coming back to law because I've done it before. It's something I know how to talk about, and it's another thing that I think needs addressing, because I know we're resetting it, but at the same time, there are certain rules that need to be in place with these writers, in that there are certain things you don't touch. Create something new. Don't need to be going back to the Primarchs. By the way, if we make our... Here's the thing. If we make our changes properly, and they're working, we don't need the fucking Primarchs. Saying, if we make the changes properly, and they're going well, we don't need Primarchs. Because 40k didn't need Primarchs plus years and got on just fine. Right? I don't think we need to bring them back. If everything's going well and all of our changes are really good and we've readdressed the law, it's got a solid foundation to build on, you have a sandbox within to tell your stories that has clear... It's like Brandon Sanderson's law on magic, right? Your magic system in your setting is only as interesting as its limitations, right? If there's no limitations to your magic system, it ceases to be interesting. The same thing goes for 40k and every single fantasy series you've ever had in your life. If there must be clear, concise rules on what is and is not possible, if you start bringing back Clone Fulgrim, if you start talking about the 2nd and 11th Primarchs, if you start doing this, that, and you start bringing back Gilliman and all this sort of thing, you start to open a can of worms where everything is canon, so nothing matters. I think that's the point that Matt was trying to go on before when he said, okay, we're doing like a solid, here is what 40k is, you know what I mean? Because if we have a solid canon where things are possible and things are not possible, we really define what the how magic works, psychers work. You know, we define how psychic nulls work, how we really bring into focus, hey, Grey Knights, are they really 1 in a million people? No, don't be retarded. That's not how that can work, right? Guard regiments. Does an entire hive world have a 10,000 man guard regiment looking over it? No. That's retarded. You know, so these are the things that we need to shave down and pull into focus and say, okay, here are clear building blocks that you can use to create your stories. That's more exciting than Games Workshop just jizzing on a wall and saying, do the rest. I mean, that writing team, if it doesn't exist, it will. I hire people to write. But anybody who's had any hand in doing what's been going on now needs to fuck off and go. Needs to go somewhere else and do that. Most of the Black Library writers will be gone. They'll be like, okay, you can go write for Marvel or whatever it is, because you know people are using, like I was saying, like people like Dan Abnett can't get published elsewhere, and you're like, huh, he writes for Marvel, dude. That's not a good thing. That's not. I don't know why you're using that as a positive thing. That is a bad thing. Marvel and for Dan Abnett. Now you can all go over there, right? Dan Abnett, I don't need John Grammaticus. I don't need to self-insert characters. Off you go. And let's get some new writers in here. I would probably go to somebody like Joe Abercrombie with a dump truck full of fucking money. Say, hey Joe, put the novel down, write some Warhammer for us. You know, write the. We would do a Dark Imperium-esque trilogy, massive books, huge books about the big event that's going on in 40k right now to set the scene for what 40k is going forward, and then you go from there.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we could set things up and pay them off as well as these seasons roll on, right?
In fact, you get an actual fucking author, mate. You get an actual dude. You don't just go to some dickwad in the warehouse, say, hey, are you free on Tuesday to write the novel? No, and these same people, Dan Abnett, Aaron Dembski-Bell, they're the same people over and over and over again. You go and you go to an established grimdark author, and Abercrombie would be my top one, A1, and you say, mate, you like Warhammer, you like video games, write me a trilogy, here's some money, how much, I can write all sorts of numbers on this check, how much do you want, right? And that is it. And even if he does only the one trilogy for you, you've got this amazing benchmark to set. Say, this is the standard now. If I get something across my desk that is not this standard, it's not getting fucking published with my company's name on it. That's it. You know, and it sells like hotcakes, because why wouldn't it? It's a Joe Abercrombie book. That's Warhammer. Like, that would absolutely burn off the shelves, right? And we go from there, and we don't do things like Horus Heresy, where we bloat it up, you know, no. Every faction should have its own novels, its own series, doing different things. They should intermix and intertwine. And again, that's you set the precedence with law. You set it down, and you make it. Again, you said it before. You pay it off. Whatever you set up has to be paid off eventually. You know, there's no more of this edging of the audience. There is no more introducing ideas that are never going to fucking come back again. It's the worst part of 40k.
Yeah, you don't make a book called The Wolf Time if Lehman Russ isn't coming out later that year, right? Is kind of where I'm at. The Black Library thing isn't something we've discussed thus far, but that's a tough kind of beast to wrangle as well, because I don't really keep a toe in their pool. No, you don't think so?
Honestly, man, I don't think it is. No, fuck them, nuke them, go away, Like, the amount of good I'm sorry, guys. You know, the amount of good Black Library books that are out there. Or what? 10% of them?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
Maybe,
but I think this might be like the spiciest thing we've said today. Dude, people seem to love Black Library more than they dislike it, from what I can gather.
I'm saying get rid of Black Library.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
I'm saying get rid of people working there. I think if 10% of your books are good,
just do 10%.
You need to fuck off.
Yeah, no,
you need to go away.
That's probably fair, but I think the public perception is that the Siege of Terra is just a banger. You know what I mean? Horus Heresy, 10 out of 10. Well, that's being disingenuous. I think people are overly optimistic than they are pessimistic on the Horus Heresy and Siege of Terra.
I think a lot of people who say, whenever I see the Siege of Terra as a banger, it always tends to be people who have a vested interest in milking Games Workshop balls, to me. So, you know, I've yet to come across a fan, like an actual, honest to God, dude who's like, this is amazing. I mean, it's always, yeah, this is a steam pile of shit. Like, you know, there are a few good moments. They rely on their moments. I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but the Siege of Terra books, they rely on their moments. It could have been one or two books and been amazing. But no, it's 5, 6, 7 books, and it's terrible. You know, it's the thing from...
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Go ahead, man.
I would suggest also that as a blanket policy for the company, but also the literature, moving away from all kinds of identity politics and related type things. This whole, like, Warhammer is for everyone, but not you type stuff. Like, nope, completely agnostic, right?
It should be
pro or, like, you are just a company. You don't have a fucking opinion. You're a company, and your books will reflect this. I don't want to be opening a book and just being accosted by the latest, you know, girl boss champion that makes no sense in the setting. All right. Again, if it makes sense in the setting, go for it, right? But that's the defining factor, right? And if it doesn't make sense in the setting, you know, it can be a girl boss. Like, if I'm writing a story about Sisters of Battle, it shouldn't be featuring, you know, a male antagonist or protagonist, I should say, who's a member of, you know, the Silent Sisters or something. It would make no sense, right? So, same thing, like, let's get away from any of that kind of stuff. I don't want books to be preachy. I want them to be escapist sci-fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
So
that's exactly what I was going to say.
I also think a lot of the people who tend to say, oh, it's brilliant, right? These are people who have Stockholm Syndrome. Not in that they can't leave, but because they don't read anything else. Almost everybody that I know says the Siege of Terra books are absolute bangers. Don't read wider sci-fi and don't read wider fantasy.
Right.
They'd be like,
yeah, I'm inclined to think that's more the case than the. Yeah.
If people think as well that they can infer, if people think they can also infer a particular, like, hidden message or whatever from the books, like, no, just, it's not like Warhammer's always been about fascism or whatever, you know. No. Go and read some good fiction, okay? Go and read some good science fiction. And then come back to us, because you'll be amazed. It'll be like Tolkien. You can't draw one-to-one parallels. That's what makes it good. It's its own thing. It does draw on real things that happened as foundations. Warhammer should be like that. I shouldn't be opening that and just thinking, oh, they're describing Donald Trump. That should not be my first thought when I read a book, and yet that has happened.
It's lame. But this is the other thing.
It pulls you out of it, right?
Yeah. Well, what I meant by people who say, but please don't get offended, folks. By the way, it's a fantasy series, fucking grow. But like, in terms of like people saying, well, it's a banger and this and that, and I say, well, you haven't read other fantasy or other sci-fi. If you think that, like that is empirical. That is literally provable. You know? Go and read any modern Grimdark fantasy book, and it will shit all over any. Apart from one or two Gottschalk and Felix books, it will shit on anything Games Workshop will put out, right? That's the standard I demand. If I'm running this department, I demand that standard. Our brand has to be on par with the greatest fantasy works of the modern age. That's what it deserves. It doesn't deserve...
Great sentiment.
Wanking himself off over John Grammaticus. It doesn't deserve, you know, this Decimus character being fed in by Aaron Dembski Baldwin as this awesome thing and then never fucking touched again. I'm sorry, that's not good enough. It's not good. Like, whenever you see Black Library, you say Eisenhorn, or the Night Lord's Trilogy, or Gaunt's Ghosts, right? There's like 4 or 5 series where you're like, those are good, right? They're still not as good as most things that are in modern fantasy.
If you make
Warhammer.
Fantasy books that are too of the moment, then the problem is they become trapped in the moment.
Yeah. They're good because they're Warhammer, not because they're good books. You know what I mean? Yeah, like Siege of Terra. Like, if you took those Siege of Terra books, you just hot dropped one of them in, like, the midst of the high point of the Horus Heresy, like, you drop it straight after Horus Rising, you drop, you know, I don't know.
Oh God, could you imagine?
Like, yeah, you just drop one of those, like, in there like a hot turd,
times.
People would just be like, what is this? Like this long, slow burn of the Horus trilogy, immediately hard cutting to the Siege of Terra. It's like, like an Oprah Winfrey giveaway, like you die, and you die, and you die, and you die. And it's just like that shock, Game of Thrones style shock factor happening. So yeah, no, these books, they're very. If they didn't have Siege of Terror by Games Workshop slapped on there, they wouldn't have sold anywhere near those numbers. It could have had the exact same internal content. But if you didn't know it was Games Workshop and Warhammer, it never would have left the shelves at your local bookstore. Because they're not good enough to.
I have a pitch for our if we redoing the Horus Heresy, because I'm sorry, if we own the company, I'm gutting all those novels.
Yes.
So
let's redo it.
My pitch, I'm doing this for both of you, but also mainly for Macca's ears, right? I'd have thought the other day, and this came in a dream, by the way, so I was like, that's a really good idea, and I woke up, right? So, Alanius Pius, like, you don't tell Horus Heresy from the point of view of the Space Marines. It is a 10-book series about this one soldier who fights in the Imperial Army during the Horus Heresy, right? He fights at the side of the Lunar Wolves, and then from there he sees Horus's fall. He becomes quite a trusted, advisor or whatever. He sees Horus's fall. He then goes throughout the galaxy on a Star Wars, like grimdark Star Wars, like epic adventure across the Horus Heresy, making his way to Terra, where he finally ends up on the Bridge of the Vengeful Spirit, where he sacrifices himself so the Emperor can kill Horus. Right. So that would be how I would do the Horus Heresy, because then what you've done. You've had this amazing 10-arc story where we've seen certain legions, but not all of them, right? We've seen how really terrifying the Horus Heresy is, how tragic it is, how awesome it is, and you've now tantalized everybody to the point that they want more. They're not exhausted. You haven't done like, here's some cool novels. Oh, now we're back to Caliban, 5,000 years ago. What? No. You followed this one character from start to finish, so you know how it ends, but you've touched on enough things on his tour through the galaxy, with all these tragic events and people dying left, right, and centre before he gets to Terra, that you're like, oh, I want to hear more about that. I want to hear more about that. He meets the White Scar, he meets the Blood Angels and things like that. That's how you tell the Horus Heresy from the ground up. You don't tell it from top down, you tell it from the ground up, so the Primarchs are larger than life, We never get to hear from them in their own words. They're these gods that are walking around. They're terrifying. And when Alanius Pius sees them fighting, he must shit himself. Like in the book. He just literally voids his bowels. You know what I mean? And we hear about Horus Heresy from this one dude who saw a lot of it out of sheer fucking chance. Yeah, sheer chance. He was there to see some big events like Istvan, things like that. Do you know what I mean? That's how I would do Horus Heresy. That's how you reset it. You get, right, back to the start, fuck it. And he's not perpetual, by the way, he's just a normal dude. He's a guy called Alanius Pius, and he just goes from one to the other, and by sheer fucking chance, sees the Horus Heresy, or some of it. That's what I would do anyway. Sorry, that's a bit of a tangent.
No, yeah,
I want to throw all these fucking books like Old Earth in the bin on the fire.
Old Earth.
Get them in the sea. I don't need Nemesis. I don't give a shit. I don't need them. I know they don't succeed. Why are you writing this book? I know Horus doesn't die. What's the point?
Look, I need to know how Vulcan gets to Terra, okay? It's very important to me.
No,
Sarcasm, by the way. Sarcasm.
Yeah, no, but like when we say you got to leave people thirsting for more, and when you try and answer all of the questions, it's never as satisfying as just leaving the question hanging.
Well, I wouldn't even.
I would rather have 100 YouTubers making fan theories than to give out one really unsatisfying,
Yeah, I don't even think they've answered the questions
canon,
in the Horus Heresy. It's just.
Did you know the Primarchs had a mother figure, and that Astarte was a woman who worked on the Primarch project? And
I don't care.
I don't care. I don't care that it was a woman. I don't care that it was a man. I don't care. It's irrelevant. It's crap.
The one good thing Erebus does is stab that bitch.
The only person who I need to care about in that setting. The only person that matters is called the Emperor. I don't care if it's Mechanicum. I don't care if it's fucking Eldar Harlequins. Like, it will never be satisfying, the answer. When really it's just like, the Emperor and like 4 billion unknown lab technicians. Like that's it. That's all I need. Happy, content. Don't
Moving
you
on.
know?
Yeah.
When you So, geez, is there anything we haven't covered in our ownership of this new company?
I think this Games Workshop's about to take over the nerd zeitgeist. I think Marvel need to watch the backs.
In good news, you know, all the people that I fired in the executive management, I've just saved a couple of million a year just there alone. That, you know, we'll be able to reinvest for the shareholders.
Well, Big Kev got his payoff.
Yeah.
So-
Well, everyone in the top end did, because how many stock options and
Oh, for
other
sure.
things did they give them?
Oh yeah.
For sure.
Oh, there's a lot of rich people out of our takeover, man. A lot of wealthy people. They can go make their own thing, like a really pretty version of Warlord Games.
Yeah, well, because that's so easy to do, right? Because like Kev now can go and start his own Warhammer competitor, because like he's got a couple of £1 million to his name. He could easily just make that happen, right?
All he
It's
needs
just
to
so
do,
easy if you're not happy to just start your own.
Oh,
all he
yeah.
needs to do is watch Grimdark Therapy on Thursday this week when we're recording this. You know, he will find out how to make the 40k killer. That's all he
There
needs
you
to do.
go.
You know,
Yeah,
all
job's
there,
done.
Giving you all the answers. Absolutely.
All right, well, that sounds like a good point to wrap this up. We've been going on for just over 2 hours, so this is a beefy one, but an enjoyable one.
Mhm.
Before we sign off, anything you guys want to shout out or plug around or anything like that, channel-wise?
No, because when this comes out, my Dark Therapy episode will already have been aired. It's over there, so go and check it out if you haven't already. We do Hobby Nightmares on my channel, real life talk about 40k and the hobby, men's mental health, things like that. We do lore rants as well on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and on Sundays we rebuild Horus Heresy Legions, because Games Workshop dropped the ball massively on Horus Heresy, so we try to fix that. We're doing Alpha Legion, the last one, not this week, but next week. But that means nothing to you because I don't know when Kaifa's putting this up. So maybe the Alpha Legion will already be up, I don't know. But then after that we're doing Imperial Guard regiments, rebuilding those, and Xenos factions and things on Sundays. So yeah, head over there and yeah. Good stuff. 5 videos a week, because I don't have a life, so this is what I do.
So
How about you,
yeah,
Maka?
when we're recording, I'm just going to pretend that like when you release this, whenever that may be, I'm looking back at the past one. I can't believe the Heresy release we got on the 17th of April 2025 was that thing. It was amazing. It was not what I expected that we would get that of all things. Like OMG.
Email Space Marines? What an announcement! Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just a picture of Kevin Roundtree in his new Bugatti or something.
Mankini it up.
and with that,
I've got nothing exciting.
Didn't you have what did I wake up to today to see? Oh, the vertical
Well,
slice. I like the vertical slices.
I'm enjoying those. I kind of want to do more, but yeah, we've got to see what happens with the game system, because I'm expecting something middle of the year, September-ish. We'll see.
That's fair. Alrighty, everybody. If you made it to the end of the video, well, you know you're a hobby
The
hero.
real one.
Yeah.
The real one.
And with that, we'll catch all of you on the next Grimdark Therapy.
See ya.
Bye-bye.